Hey everyone, it's Christine. Welcome back to another episode. We have Hayley back to talk about the afterlife, connecting to the afterlife, stories, and so much more. This is going to be an episode that you will not want to miss. Hayley, it's wonderful to see you again. Thank you so much
Hi,
for being here.
lovely to be here. Thank you, Christine. Looking forward to getting into this chat.
Me too. For anyone that's new here, or if this is your first time watching this or seeing Hayley, she is a family constellations facilitator, psychic and psychic medium. I'm going to post all the previous videos we have done where she shares more of what she does and how she helps guide other humans in this world,
Mm.
as well as different nuggets that we've delved into surrounding creating your own reality, your own life, and even a behind the scenes look on Hayley's own journey. I'll link it somewhere up here so you can take a look. It'll give you a lot more background information and also help you understand some of the themes that we may be talking about that may connect back. But also, if you'd like to work with Hayley, and I'll get to that too at the end, but if you'd like to work with Hayley, it'll give you even more ideas of some of the things she does. So I want to start off because the afterlife it's such a big topic. It's so broad when you just think afterlife.
For
When did
sure.
that theme first cross your path? When did all of a sudden you think I can connect to the afterlife, or I can speak or communicate to others that have crossed over, or even in other realms? When did that happen for you?
Well, probably it happened when I was doing the constellation training, actually, because prior to that, although I had been in communication with my mom that had passed, it hadn't occurred to me that that's what I was doing. So it was only when I trained as a constellation facilitator when they tapped into the energy and they were bringing forth ancestors and they were bringing people from the other side. Then I realized that I had been doing that all along, and I was like, "Oh wait, that's a thing." So I think when did that, and then I still didn't realize how my connection was different to those who were training with me in as a facilitator in constellation work. I thought that they were all experiencing what I was experiencing, but I was to learn that that was slightly different. My experience was slightly different.
So, given that this is not commonplace in family constellations training, what impact did it have?
Yeah,
In,
it wasn't discussed that it's mediumship. I mean, it is actually, there is theory on that, and Bert Hellinger did discuss theory on, and I think we've discussed this in previous videos about it being a part mediumship, part psychotherapy. But when I was trained by someone sort of what you call peer-to-peer trained. So he had trained under Bert Hellinger, but it was his own sort of influence in the work, and he wasn't approaching it from the point of view of being psychic or mediumship work. He concentrated a lot on the shamanic aspect of it because it's a lot of shamanic healing and working with ancestors and that kind of thing. Um, but I think that the journey with connection or you, as you would say, the mediumship aspect, that was my own journey, very private journey. It was very different from my training as a facilitator.
okay, thanks for bringing that up again and clarifying that,
Mm.
because it sounds like what you're saying is this is naturally embedded based on the founder's premises with family constellations, but not every facilitator who gets trained and who continues training others carries forth that same tenet of, well, embed your own psychic and intuitive guidance into the work that you do, right?
Right. So, I mean, they will talk about how connected you are to the field or not, but there's no real discussion on it being mediumship per se. Um, and so many family constellation facilitators aren't natural mediums like I am. So they connect in a different way than I do, and they focus more on the theory of family constellation work. So they approach it from a more theoretical approach. But
Mm.
as you say, you have to have that ability to step outside this realm and move into another one. But as I say, every facilitator does that differently.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to say, because when you connect through your psychic channels, and simply extrasensory perception is just another way of communicating that's
Yeah.
available to all of us. And I want to ask, so many questions are coming right now. When you connect to folks that are in other dimensions or those that have crossed over from this material world, from Earth,
Yeah.
into afterlife, heaven, however you'd like to denote that, how do you know if you are psychic or a psychic medium? I think this would help clarify for folks.
Oh,
Maybe.
but I think I'm the wrong person to ask because I don't even know the difference. um, because to me, psychic is like I've always termed psychic as being telling the future or being able to see, to preempt things, kind of being clear. What's the word? Precognizant or whatever. That's how I've always thought of as psychic. And that certainly isn't really part of family constellation work at all. There's no kind of projections. You'll have, you'll test the energy of where things are going, but you're not making some kind of projections like say that you would if you went for a psychic reading per se. Because psychic abilities do basically come part and parcel with connecting with other realms. However, some psychics will channel information about what's about to happen or what's going to happen, but they're not necessarily talking to those who've gone before. They're not necessarily connecting with people who've crossed over. They're connecting with another dimension because there's multi dimensions.
Mhm.
So they're connecting with the other dimension of possibilities. They're connecting with the snapshot of what your future may present as. They're connecting with, when you kind of do a psychic read, you're looking at somebody's energy, you're looking at their auric fields, and you're looking at, oh, these are possible predictions of what may happen. And then whether or not that happens is entirely fluke, actually, because no psychic can actually predict 100%, because when you're doing a psychic reading, you're literally taking a snapshot and you're saying these are the possible predictions and this may happen, and it may happen that exactly as you said, or it may be with a slight variance, or the person makes a different choice and then it doesn't happen at all. So for me, that's a psychic read, and that's a psychic ability. But then I always differentiate between that and mediumship, where you're talking to those who've crossed over, you're talking to those who've been here before and are now no longer. But then also mediumship also allows you into other realms and other doors. So you might not just be connecting with the dead. You may be connecting with other beings, other angelic realms, or different energetic dimensions, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask that because some folks that are navigating this path, whether they are simply discovering their own gifts or they're on a healing journey or even a practitioner or facilitator like yourself, sometimes there's conflation and I feel like confusion between the two. And
Mm.
they're ever so subtle, but I agree with you about both of those definitions because they align to how I see those as well. And I know everyone receives this information and sees things very differently. We can start with your psychic gifts and then with the psychic mediumship,
Okay.
especially when connecting to the afterlife and perhaps working with clients and you're connecting to
Okay.
ancestors and whomever is part of that uh, team of sorts.
Mm.
What does it look like for you when you start communicating? What comes up? Because you did mention precognition, which tends to be seeing things like premonitions or foresight or
Mm.
events that happen. You're able to
Yeah.
see them before they happen.
Yeah.
How does that materialize for you? What does it look like?
Well, when I connect with other dimensions, it sometimes feels a little bit more real than here. So I will see a different reality, or I will see something playing out, like it's playing out in front of my eyes, but it hasn't happened here yet. So then I am able to tap into almost like a train of thought or a possibility for the future for either that person, or if we're discussing an organization or whatever it is that you're looking at. but then I can see it play out as if in real time. And yeah, it looks the same as here, but it's almost like you're playing a movie in your head, of these events or this circumstance or this thing that you're connecting with.
That's really interesting because I think I've heard from so many people how they receive this psychic communication in very different aspects, whether through claircognition, clairsentience, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairalience,
Hmm.
clairgustance. And the way you described it, I've heard repeatedly, probably some of the more common ways that you can connect and see things that are on their way or that may change for whatever reason. And I
Yeah,
asked that.
I mean, but I connect on a lot of those levels, so I can see it, I can hear it, and definitely I can feel it. So I definitely connect on at least three, when I'm getting information, and sometimes it will be more visceral in one than another, depending on what the message is coming through.
Okay. I asked that because I think it's interesting, again, the process in which someone receives this information, how they go about communicating, what it looks like. Because for some people, they see apparitions or they see other people just like I see you in this dimension.
Yeah, yeah,
And
but it's
others,
all in your head. But it's just as real.
yeah, but there are people that actually see things, kind of like
Oh, got you.
animals. That's what
Yeah,
I'm saying. That's why I asked this question because I think it's fascinating for folks
yeah,
to kind of see how different ways people can receive this and
yeah.
communicate, which it doesn't look the same. And sometimes when we are first developing our gifts or honing them or even nourishing them, we think it has to be a certain way. We think it looks a certain
Right.
way, almost as if the curtain goes back or is drawn back. Everyone comes on the stage and they're like, here's the message you need to receive. And it's like, no, sometimes it goes through or comes through in different forms. And
Yeah.
explain
I
that.
know that I know some people, when I was initially interested in honing my psychic gifts and whatever, and I went to a couple of trainings and that, and a lot of a lot of the psychic training or honing of the gifts worked with symbols, but that never worked for me. I never got symbols. Um, I will say though that there are certain things or events that are more uh, particular to me. So if I see a certain thing playing out, I know it means this, but it's not necessarily a symbol. It's not necessarily. It's more literal. But a lot of the information I get, to be fair, is what is the one where it's just inner knowing.
Clairsentience
I
or
I think
claircognizance.
it's clear cognizant. Yeah, it a lot of it is just, well, I know, and I don't know how I know. It's just I know. So a lot of that information is just like a confirmation I get in my body. It's just a specific frequency, a specific vibration, and I can feel it solid in my body, and it's like, that's what's happening.
Pay attention, folks.
Yeah.
Think about how you also receive messages because I think it's so important as we continue honing these gifts. And also, if they're just coming up for many that have experienced spiritual awakening, sometimes they're just sudden or spontaneous. And people are like, I have no idea what to do, what's going
Yeah,
on, why
for
I'm
sure.
seeing things and no one else sees them, or even, all different scenarios. So I
Or
appreciate
hearing things or sensing things. Yeah.
exactly, or smelling or tasting. And what's interesting is a lot of times if you have animals, you're always going to be on generally similar vibrations. Like if you hear something, especially with psychic gifts,
Yeah.
you'll see that they also attune to it.
Right.
And
Okay, that's interesting.
so it's really cool. And I asked that because I just wanted folks to see how it is you process this, how you receive this, and also to allow a different perspective because psychic gifts are very, I would say, varied the way people receive this information and
Yeah,
process
for
it.
sure.
And it looks different. So it's not the same for everyone. And I think that's one of the biggest
Yeah.
mistakes in this field is thinking it has to look the same way as others. If you're not receiving
Mm.
symbols, like you said, or if you're not seeing people before your eyes, that you're
Yeah.
doing something wrong. And I feel like it's very tailored. The language we have with, you could say, source, universe, God, is
Yeah.
very distinct. Of course, there's similarities. So moving on into the psychic mediumship, what is something that alerts you or lets you know, wait a minute, this is more than just a message. I've got some person, some, well, it could be not a person too, but some energy here with me.
Okay. So there's two parts to that question because as you were talking, I'm not one of these people like you got all those TV psychics who talk about where they get like people coming in all the time, and when they were little they would. I've never been that. I've never had that. It's it's very defined. The very first experience I had with ghosts being those who are trapped, they're halfway between two worlds. So they're not here and they're not there. They're literally in limbo. Um, then I kept bumping into them in the middle of the night, and I had moved to a haunted hotel, and it was a documented haunted hotel on Discovery's Most Haunted or whatever. And so they'd done tons of programs with this hotel, and they were doing ghost tours every night and whatever. And a friend of mine said, "Well, you've moved onto the property. Do you think those ghosts are going to be there for very long?" And I didn't. It didn't even occur to me what she was saying. And then I kept bumping into this woman and this old man in the middle of the night, and I found myself apologizing to people who weren't there. And I was like, oh, hang on. Hang on. You're talking to somebody. Oh, okay, hang on. That is a ghost. And but because it was happening like, and it was alarming me, like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was walking in the kitchen, I went to the fridge and I walked smack bang into this woman. And I said, "You got to stop scaring me like that. Like, you can't just come and go as you please. Just because you can walk through walls doesn't mean that you get to just come into my space whenever you please." I said, "If you want my help, you need to book an appointment." And so, I said, "I'll let you know when I'm ready to work with you." So then I let them know, and I did work with them. But it's kind of been the case since then that if I am to cross over per se, it's a very intentional space that I'm in. And I'm not just going to be walking through the street normally. Okay, there are exceptions to the rule, but generally, I'm not just walking through the street bumping into past people that have passed over or whatever the case would be, or people knocking on my window and saying, "Can you communicate with Auntie Joe?" So I don't really have that, but it's very intentional. And so then I basically show up and make myself open to discussing with them or talking to them. When it comes to ghosts, though, it's different because they're stuck. And so then I have gone to people's houses where I have had to deal with the ghosts that are there and help them to cross over into the afterlife. And in that case, each experience has been different. And you can generally feel the energy as you go into the room. I can very sensitive to the energy, and I can feel the different shifts in the energy, and I can feel the temperature changes in the energy. And then it's very much a feeling process of feeling the energy of the room, and then feeling something, and then generally then I can connect. Sometimes they're very loud though. I had one client when I went into her house, this particular ghost had been terrorizing the family, and they'd moved out to stay at a hotel. They were terrorized. And when I went into their house, the ghost just screamed. I mean, she just screamed, and the whole house reverberated. I could feel this. Obviously, they weren't party to it, but I could just feel the whole house reverberating with this energy. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but I guess with ghosts, because they're halfway between worlds, it's more visceral. It's very sensory orientated. And then if I'm dealing with ancestors or loved ones who've passed over, it's generally I'm in an intentional space doing that. Sometimes though, I will get uninvited, or not uninvited, but people who don't make appointments. But it'll be generally people that I'm connected to, or people that I know, and they want to pass on a message.
So what I'm hearing is you are a psychic medium that requires an RSVP. If if energies want to connect with you, they have to get in line and get onto your calendar.
Well, no, generally it's from this side that we're connecting. So generally it's on request of someone on this side who wants to deal with something.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So then we're generally saying, okay, anybody connected to this issue, please show up.
Yes. No, I meant that jokingly because you kept talking about how it was intentional and you are not someone that ghosts are just lining up. Not even
Yeah,
ghosts. It seems more spontaneous the way you have been able to interact or communicate with them, but also ancestors. It's been more
yeah.
intentional. That was a question that I wanted to ask is how you can differentiate if you're in situations. Is this a ghost or is this just a pesky or frisky ancestor or someone that maybe lived here before and they're coming back with a message? How can folks differentiate that?
It's not an easy thing. I mean, because there's different forms of energy. There's energy attachments. There's energy remnants. There's ghosts. Also, when I'm doing family constellation work, I'm dealing with the energy of people who are alive. So I may be connecting to members of your family, but on a soul level. So it's very nuanced, and I don't think I can actually even put it into words. Um, it's possibly, I suppose, the easiest way to explain it would be the vibration within my body changes.
Okay. Yeah, because going back a little bit when I asked about how you maybe see or perceive messages and communication as a psychic medium, you brought in ghosts. That's why I asked for the differentiation. I didn't know if ghosts were or have played a huge role or have been maybe a big population in the work that you do with family constellations, or is this more tangential? Is it something separate, or are ghosts generally part of the sessions?
Well, no, so I still use similar methods to connect, whether it's a family constellation or if it's a ghost. But it's very differentiated because well, no, actually it's not that differentiated. It's like that movie with Ghost Whisperer. It's basically therapy for ghosts. So if I bump into a ghost, or someone's having a problem with a ghost, and then I go to address the ghost, I then go to find out where the ghost is at. And like I say, well, they call them earthbound spirits in that movie, but so it's probably a better name than ghost. um, so then I would connect with the departed person, and then I would find out why it is that they're stuck there. And there's a couple of reasons normally why a couple of common reasons why they're there, because most of the time, if you're stuck in limbo like that, there it's stuff that you need to resolve, or it's you're not aware that you're dead, or that you passed in some kind of trauma and you're just kind of repeating the same events over and over again, and you're not aware of it. And there's a couple of other instances, but then I deal with them, and I connect them to the other side. So I bring their family forward, or sometimes I get help from my guides and my ancestors on that side to meet them and take them across the gate and take them where they need to go. And so then I work with them to reunite them with their loved ones and to connect them into the light. There have been instances where, if a spirit or soul is tampered with or compromised, then it's much harder to get them to go to the other side.
So, based on what you just said, have you ever had a ghost where they're like, I'm not budging. I'm
Yeah. Yeah,
staying.
that one that screamed when I went into her house because she screamed that it was her house, and she wasn't aware that she was dead. And she was like, I ain't going anywhere, my house. And she so she was very religious, and so she was not aware that she had passed because she'd been praying to be cured from an illness, and she was convinced that God was going to save her. So she actually was not aware that she had passed. And because in certain religions they don't believe in ghosts, they call them familiar spirits, and they
Mhm.
say that you're dealing directly with the devil in familiar form. So it made it very difficult then for her to comprehend that she was one, because she didn't believe in ghosts. And so she couldn't accept the reality that she was actually terrorizing these people, and this was no longer her home. Um, and so we had to use a little bit of muscle to try to get her to go. And I had to employ a lot of help from my team to try to get her across, because she wasn't going.
So you're telling me though you eventually helped her cross
Yeah,
over.
yeah.
Okay. So it was a
But
success, just a
but
little bit
in her case, normally I'm part of the reunion. I can see them joining their families. I see the joy on the outside. In her case, I was not able to. She was chaperoned across. They had to drag her across, and I was like, okay, you take her and show her where to go, because she's not going.
so what you just said made me remember the movie Ghosts, the one with Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore, where there were some ghosts or those that were killed.
Hmm.
If I'm getting that correctly. It's been a while since I've seen the movie.
I don't remember. Yeah.
But sometimes they don't realize that they're dead. I think it was one
Yeah.
of the characters who was a little bit violent, who was violent in the
Hmm.
movie, and you see the black apparitions appear and drag him down
Yeah.
and take him away. So it makes me wonder then, from what you've just said, you were able to help this female ghost cross over, even though she appeared stubborn and didn't want to go. Have you ever experienced cases where the ghosts were flat out they rejected all attempts for help and support and they're like, nope.
Well, in her case, we had to try several times, which I haven't had to do. In the end, I had to make her aware that her soul could become very compromised, and that she was so intent on going to heaven per se, but if she stuck around, she was going to be compromised, because um, that's where soul warfare comes in. And then certain deals could be made with her to stick around because she could live forever, and certain deals with certain people that we won't mention. And I kind of had to make her aware that that was actually a very real threat if she continued to behave in this way, and that if she wanted to save her soul, she had to go. But certainly, yeah, there are energy forms in other ways that can be quite stubborn and obstinate, and of the darker shade. Um, it's just part of the um, natural landscape.
I asked that because I know, I guess this is kind of opening the leeway going towards hauntings and different
Mm,
lands, locations, the more material possessions, if you will, on this earth where people have repeatedly tried to help those energies, those spirits cross over. And for
right?
whatever reason, they haven't been able to or they don't. And so you've repeatedly seen people that have experienced, haunting phenomenons and different things that are happening. So that's why I asked if there are ghosts that are just saying, nope, it ain't happening today. I'm staying put. How can someone make peace with that? What are some ways that if you are in a haunted, excuse me, home environment, a domicile, because you mentioned that you lived in a haunted hotel, right?
Yeah.
How can people make peace with that? How can they continue living and thriving if they are coexisting with an energy that may not want to leave or vacate?
I wouldn't suggest that they'd be very comfortable, and I wouldn't suggest they try. If they're not comfortable, you might have to vacate that premises yourself. But in the haunted hotel case, it was very interesting, because some of the documentarians that had come to the site said that there was a resident evil at the hotel, and psychics had fled the site, and they all spoke about this terrible evil on the premises. And so we see this in family constellation work as well all the time. People's definition of evil is very linear, very black and white. So the reason that these psychics and these documentarians had fled the site is because they tapped into some trauma that had happened there. And so one of the buildings that they went into, they witnessed the walls pouring with blood, and they heard the screams of these people. And because of all our I think our religious imprinting, they had automatically made the link with, okay, well, that's hell. And, we're seeing the souls of the damned, and the blood on the walls is all this vicious murder, vicious things they want to do to people. So when I worked with that group of ghosts, and that was a very interesting case because it was multi-generational ghosts from very different time periods that had remained on the property over a span of like 100 years. It was a extremely interesting case. But when I went into that specific building where everybody had said that resident evil lived, it became clear to me, and it was explained to me, because I had told those ghosts, because they were also putting on a lot of dramatics to get my attention. And they were showing me like bloody scenes and weird things. And I said, I don't need your dramatics. You can just tell me the story. You don't need to give me all this visionary, terrifying stuff. And so we went into that building, and it was so funny because I had to laugh out loud, because the history of the building and the hotel had had many iterations in these previous years. In the Victorian era, it was something, and then it became a school, and then it became, during World War II, it was actually a prisoner of war camp. Okay. And the soldiers were kept on the premises. And that building was used as a hospital, as a makeshift hospital. So the screaming and the blood on the walls were the soldiers' trauma that was stored in the walls of that property. And it came across as loud and bloody and violent. And people had just assumed that that was evil. And there was evil intent behind that. It wasn't. What it was the energy echoes, or the energy, latent energy that was stored there, that was so traumatic. And obviously there was violent scenarios, because people, back then they were having their legs amputated and their arms amputated without anesthesia. So the trauma would have been huge in that space. So often what people misinterpret and say it's evil intentions, or it's evil energies, or sometimes, and most often, it's actually trauma remnants and trauma energies.
I'm hearing you say that a lot of this is lower vibrations of fear, of pain,
Yeah.
hurt, despair, so many, because you just mentioned a really good example of that location inhabiting former soldiers. And during that time, obviously, it's quick
Yeah.
amputation surgeries, but no anesthesia. And I suspect throughout history, we've seen that in many places around the world, in many castles, environments, prisons,
Absolutely.
jails, solitary areas where people have experienced different forms of torture. And when people go into those spaces, they feel a certain something, usually not, let me move in here, this is a great place. It's
Yeah,
usually
right.
just said. So I think that's a really great way to detail that. And I liked how you made that distinction, that it's not always that negative type of perhaps violence that we associate those types of places with, but it could be trauma that folks that previously inhabited or lived there, or for
Yeah.
whatever reason passed through that area,
Yeah.
they experience that. And so we feel that too. It's that residual energy that's imprinted.
Yeah.
Those that are psychically open, you could obviously experience that in many ways.
Yeah.
Wow. Can I ask, with the work that you do and your connection to the afterlife, what do you feel is the biggest misconception people have?
Mm, I think that the fear of ghosts and the fear of the other worlds, I think that it is so unnecessary because, you know, in times gone past, they were very comfortable with it. And in certain, like we've discussed this, in certain communities, they're still very comfortable with it. It's still very much a part of life to honor the dead, to communicate with the dead, and to honor the natural elements and to honor the natural energies, and to work with them, and to be in harmony with them. And I think a lot of our culture and westernized thinking separates us from that, and then there's this big fear put in place where, oh, if you connect with these things, you're connecting with evil, or you're you're not Christian because you're connecting with things that aren't in the Bible, or aren't prescribed. But so many communities and so many peoples around the world, they honor their dead, they communicate with their dead, they, you know, it's part of their daily life. And so I think that that's the biggest misconception, is that it's evil, and that you shouldn't be doing it, or that it's otherworldly, and it's no longer part of our daily practice, and no longer part of our daily lives. But a lot of communities are still very good at it. A lot, especially here in South Africa. I mean, that's where family constellation work came from, because he looked at how the Zulu people connect to their ancestors and honor them in their daily lives. So I think the more people do that, the more they can start to understand that it has a place, and it's not some otherworldly thing that you need to be afraid of.
I think what you just said gets at just like the tip of the iceberg in this discussion and talk around the fear people have of either embracing their psychic gifts or exploring the possibility of what if, especially depending on the belief systems around that, and also religion. That's another big potato to unload. That's a lot.
Yeah,
There's so many things to unpack there because if you think about it, death is also something that's inherent in this process in our bodies. Naturally, at least in this moment in time, the human body doesn't live past a certain date usually. There's an
yeah,
expiration. And people tend to associate the death of the body with the death of the energy of the
so
form.
yeah,
Yes. And I think maybe there's something there to elucidate and dive deeper more, maybe in different religions or people's own personal belief systems. I don't know. In terms of making or paving that connection to source, because ultimately it's kind of like being vacuumed up. That's how I sometimes see it. When we're done, we kind of go all
mhm,
like a vacuum to source, to
yeah,
God. You can say
yeah.
heaven, afterlife. So we don't die. We just change our form like a different outfit. And so
Absolutely. But people are afraid of death. You know, it's very much taboo in our culture. When I was in West Virginia, I was part of a club called the Death Club, which honored death in all forms and discussed death where it wasn't taboo. And I so enjoyed that because really death has become separated from our culture, but it's so much a part of our stories. We're all going to die at some point. We're all going to lose loved ones who are going to die. And the more we can debunk that fear of dying and that fear of separation, I think the more comfortable people can be with the idea that their loved ones live on, and that it is that they are still part of us, and still the love lives on, even if the physical form is no longer.
yes, you just said a key word. I think semantics play such a big role in all of this and getting reacquainted with death. It's just another door that opens, just like when we
Right.
came through the birth canal, we
Yeah.
slid down. That's why I got the vacuum reference because that's how I see it. We get sucked back up in a different form, whether it's angels that collect, people have all different ways that when they exit the earth, there have been a lot of stories, people letting their loved ones know as they're leaving in their final moments that so and so is going to pick them up or so and so
Yeah.
is waiting for them, God, Jesus, whatever. And I think
And when I've crossed people over, I mean, it's always such a beautiful reunion. It almost makes me want to cross over, like just be with them for a little bit because it's so beautiful on that side. But it's so beautiful. That energy on that side, and it's just the love just reverberates um, when they cross over. Yeah, so I've seen that, and it's really beautiful.
I think you just said something kind of referencing about or referencing near death experiences. I've seen that and heard stories about that where people are like, I want to come back because of the beauty of the love they feel of everything.
Yeah,
That
and I get to witness that. So, like, if I walk them across to the border, like, I get to like have a little peephole into that, and it's really it's amazing.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if maybe the changing language around this would help because you said something just a little bit ago about losing loved ones, but I'm like,
Mm.
we don't lose them.
No,
We don't, they just transition to another form and they're always here with us.
yeah,
And it just is about changing our perception as humans because we're so static in many ways when we think about life and death. For some people, again, depending contingent on their
mm,
own beliefs, everything turns black the moment you die. Some people think this is it, you're done. And then others, you continue on into an afterlife. And there's
yeah.
so many other philosophies. So,
So many different ideas about it. Yeah,
yeah, it helps, I think, open up the door to, from people that believe it and that don't, the possibilities of changing shape, changing form, that the gifts that you have and many others, being a psychic and psychic medium and connecting to folks in the afterlife and more broadly, as you defined earlier, in different realities, different dimensions, and different forms of energies too, like ghosts. It's kind of all part of the one same thing. We just differentiate it because of the way we define time and linearity. We see
yeah,
things as a progression like an elevator.
for
Can
sure.
I ask, in your own work here and with helping people through your family constellation sessions, like individual clients and even personally and in different situations that you've lived in, when you've connected to folks on the other side, what do you feel that they want us to know? Those that are still on this earthly realm.
Generally, most of the time, the repeated message is that they're still with their loved ones. They just want you to know that you're not alone. Because there's such a chasm left when someone dies and someone leaves your life, and there's no future for that relationship. And the way we see it is that that there is no other form of this relationship continuing, and it's repetitive um, in so many ways that they say it. They say it in so many different ways, but they all come through and they say, I'm right here with you. I'm experiencing everything with you. I haven't left you. I'm still part of you. I'm still watching everything you do. And, like I just said, the physical body leaves, but the love doesn't change. And then the love is actually almost brushed and less tarnished because it has escaped the physical form and is now bigger. It's now bigger than the person. It's just that pure energy between those people. And um, the messages may all be different, but that's the common theme: is that I haven't left and we're still together.
I love that. There was a quote, I should have pulled it,
Mm.
that really resonated with me about when we leave this earthly world, when we die, using the words that we normally do when we leave this body, this physical body. The only thing we take with us is love and
Mm.
generally any memories, but sometimes those can be, um, how do you call it? You can get your memories jogged if there are things you forget
Yeah,
during the grieving process, but you just summed it up about the love. And I think
yeah,
it helps people move more intentionally when you experience death. I feel like that's the beauty of it. And that's a little bit of a, perhaps a tangent and not really the focus of this, but with the afterlife, you mentioned such key messages, and sometimes we don't realize the impact someone or something has had in our lives until it's no longer there. And
yeah,
that may be the biggest gift of all, is learning to appreciate the moments that we have in this physical world
yeah.
wanting to love fully as much as possible and realize those are the things that we'll take with us.
Yeah.
There's a sort of comfort there. And given that you help others in this journey, what do you think people can maybe do, or what are some first steps they can take when it comes to connecting to the afterlife in their own ways? If they haven't ever done so, or after having a session with you, they realize, you know what? I really want to connect to my dad or my mom or my great grandparent or whomever is on the other side that maybe came through, or they just have felt that longing. What would be some first steps that you could suggest to someone to explore that?
Really remember the good times with them. So like relive the memories, the relive the good memories, and just that feeling taps into connecting with them. And really the sentence of we're only a thought away, it's literally like that. I mean, you just have to think of them, and often they're right there with you. And it's connection by a thought. So connecting with them by remembering the good times, remembering the love you shared, remembering the funny moments, um, that will always make it easier to connect with them. And then often you will feel that connection. Maybe you remember a funny thing that you burst out laughing because you think, oh, remember when we did that crazy thing, and and then it's almost like they're right there beside you, tapping you on your shoulder, going, "Yeah, I remember too." And so connect with them by remembering that, and then you will feel the connection with them. And there's also other ways that they will try and get in contact, particularly if you're locked in grief and it's very difficult to imagine that they're there with you. Um, there's ways that they reach out, and there's ways that they try to let you know that they're there. And I mean, a lot of them are common and spoken about feathers and coins. I've even heard recently about marbles, and I realized that it's true that kids' marbles. They said that if you find a random marble, it's a loved one thinking of you. Because so often we think, oh well, I must have a marble lying around, but actually, if you think about it, like my kids haven't used marbles in years, but I still find marbles when I'm cleaning the house. So, so that was interesting. They said marbles are a good sign because you will often find this random marble in a random place, just like you will a coin or a feather. There's other ways in nature to rainbows and butterflies. I know it sounds corny and cliche, but sometimes it's just a message just for you. And if you're open to that, you can feel it when they come through, and you're like, oh, that's just for me. That's just for me. That's a message for me. And for me, my sisters and my mom often send me messages via the radio. So they will use a song that's playing, and the words will be a direct message from them. And then I'll know the difference. I know I'm just listening to a song or I'm getting a message. And that's quite common too, is that suddenly the radio will suddenly switch to a favorite you had with that person, or that brings up a memory, and it's their way of letting you know, or of reminding you of the good times that you had. And so I think that's the easiest way to connect, and to look for the signs that they're there, and that they're connecting with you. And often people will say, well, I always feel them when I'm washing the dishes, or if I'm having tea, or if I'm in the garden, but I didn't trust it. Trust it. Trust it and feel into it. And even if you think you're half imagining it, what's the harm in that? What's the harm in imagining that your grandfather or your mother or your partner is standing right beside you? What could be more beautiful? It doesn't matter if it's part imagination and it's part connection, because the more you do that, the more solidly you can connect with them.
That's absolutely amazing. I love what you just said. I think these are some common signs from people that have reported, oh my gosh, I'm getting signs about so and so that just passed, or I feel that connection.
Yeah.
And trusting that, I think, is huge, especially just with any extrasensory form of communication, and anything that defies logic, defies
Yeah.
science.
Yeah.
I always say trust it too, because sometimes we try to figure out, well, how did that happen? Where? And we try to
Yeah.
unpack that in,
Don't overthink it.
exactly. And there's a lot of things you just can't explain. And I want to say too, for folks that are dealing with this, with the afterlife, animals too. If your animal has died, because many people consider their
Mm,
animals their children,
yeah.
family members, beyond just, and even it doesn't matter if they were livestock or not, or if they were little, it doesn't matter. Animals come through big time too in many of the similar ways.
They do. They really do. My son is autistic, so he's particularly um, sensitive to energy, and he will often describe our dog who's passing, say, "Oh, Bobby's sitting here by me now."
It's beautiful, the relationships, like you said, the stream of love that continues. And something that may be helpful too, when my grandpa died, my grieving process was not like other people, like, people think it's going to go on for a while. I knew I was going to communicate with him and I wanted to share. I set the intention and I told him, I connected to him just telepathically because I wasn't with him when
Correct.
he passed
By
away.
thought. Yeah.
And I told him, come back to me as a cardinal. And every single day for half the year, he came back. I saw him through orbs. So I'm going to say, if there's something that reminds you of loved ones, don't be afraid
Yes.
to ask because you'll most often see that. I saw it with my dogs too. He often comes back with my dogs.
Yes.
And
And the signs will often be specific to you or specific to them or something that they loved or cherished or something that you did together. Yeah.
exactly, I think that's one of the biggest promises, I think, of when the door opens and it's our time to leave the physical body. We just kind of get naked and go into another different form. But it's also a peek and letting us know we're still here, we're
Yeah.
still around. So I think that's just beautiful. I think it offers so much hope for people right now, especially amidst just a lot of changes, a lot of loss, a lot of transitions. So, just from what you've said, the afterlife in itself, just by the title, afterlife, means that it's ongoing. It keeps going. Life will continue. It's just in a different form. And I want to know if throughout the work you've done, or even personally in your own lived experience, in your own journey, anything that has helped you to continue being a human living on earth if many of your loved ones are in a different form. If you have any words to offer folks watching, any words of hopes, inspiration.
Yeah. I mean, my story, and I've lost most of my family, and certainly some days get hard when you've lost loved ones and you can't really figure out a new path forward. And I've counseled and been around so many people who have lost loved ones and really find it difficult to figure out a new way forward, um, or even finding the courage to do so. It can be very difficult. Um, and what I want to do is encourage people to know that your loved ones want you to carry on, and they celebrate your successes with you. And because they are so close by, if you live in honor of that relationship and you take it as every day that I'm going to live in honor of those who've passed, in honor of those who have loved and lost, it makes it that much easier just to lift the load off a little bit. Because even if you don't want to take steps forward, if you think about just taking step forward in honor of them, and because they want you to step forward and they want you to be happy. So if you can't do it for yourself and you can't take steps forward for yourself, then consider doing it for them, because they don't get the chance to take more steps forward. Um, but you carrying on living, you have that opportunity, and you have that opportunity to forge a path ahead. Your life continues, and they get the front seat, as to what will happen. And so that's not to say abandon your grief, but even in your grieving, consider that you're living in honor of them and living for them and honoring the love that you shared.
Thank you so much for those words, Haley. I'm going to link, like I mentioned before, Haley's video, in particular the one where she talks about her life journey, somewhere here, where for any of you that have experienced great loss, death, or any form of change in your life that was perhaps big, I feel like Haley's journey is going to really be of support, offer you insights, a lot of parallels, but also a lot of wisdom, just like Haley has offered us today about connecting to a different form, to the afterlife, and to still connect to the love that that's pretty much the only thing we're going to carry with us when we leave this plane. So, Haley, I want to thank you so much for going deeper on the afterlife, for sharing your really amazing stories, because I know there's many others, and I feel like I could listen to you just share on the stories and what you've experienced, excuse me, with us. I really appreciate you giving us tips and allowing us to recognize the beauty of the moment of where we're at and how we always have those relationships to people closest to us, even if they may not be here with us.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Christine.
You all, if you would like to work with Haley or get in contact or learn more about her, I have put all of her social media links and website details, and you can book services with her too below. Again, I highly recommend you take a look at her videos, wealth of nuggets. And if particularly you're interested in family constellations as another mode to add to your toolkit on your self care, personal growth, healing journey, take a look at this video because it dives into everything about family constellations 101, where you can learn more about this and it can be done anywhere in the world. Otherwise, thank you guys for being here. If you're interested in seeing more, if you have more questions, comment down below. Thank you. We will see you soon.
Bye.